crunch, bring it back, single leg swing. Let me teach you how to wrestle. Okay. Let me teach you how to wrestle.
Was your mom an athlete too?
Yeah, so my mom was she did a couple different things. Like she did figure skating. She did, but her best sport was solos kayaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she was I think she was on the national circuit for that.
Man. So were they grooming you from a young age, you and your siblings? Would you say they were?
Just you know, I don't know if grooming's I don't know.
Well,
but yeah, like definitely like yeah, you're gonna play a sport, yeah. So I was you know, wrestling.
Yeah. Well, but you figure you got world champ, and you said kayak what on the national team or?
Yeah. So like I don't know if it was Belarus or the USSR at that point, but she was on the national circuit for solos kayaking.
So right away, anyone who's watching from the outside is like, all right, this is selective breeding right here. Yeah. This is what they do with horses, right? And this is what we got going here right now.
Yeah, so I mean, they met at like sports school. So like we have college.
Yeah.
They have like sport college. So like where, you know, the athletics is like kind of an emphasis there. So
yeah,
that's where they met.
So then how was it growing up then with that? Were they telling you, like, what did they start you with as far as, like, training or just body awareness? I ask selfishly, too. I got, like, young kids.
Honestly, like, my wrestling didn't start until... I didn't start wrestling, and, like, I was always around the sport, but not because, like, my dad wanted me there, because, like, we were, you know... not as, you know, we were a little poor when we were younger. We had just moved to America. Like, you know, my dad, I mean, you know, not the best planning, but, you know, he came with like 2 suitcases of clothes and like $200. And was like, all right, we're starting a new life. And it's like, so we spent the first 10 years of my life like decently poor.
This is Queens now?
So no, this is like, well, yeah, no, this is like on Long Island now. But like we're starting to like, you know, make some money and you know, get settled. But for the first little bit of my life, like it's just my dad has to go coach, and we don't have a babysitter, so he just brings me with him, and I just go play in the corner or something. I've watched wrestling, like never like actually wanted to do it because it looks hard, but like, you know, so I was around it kind of growing up, and then my first time where I was like actually like my dad was like, okay, you're gonna start learning how to wrestle was probably like the end of 5th grade.
All right, so 10, 11?
Yeah, so I mean, in comparative to like some other people who start out at like 4, you know, I'm already 6, 7 years behind. So
right, but you were probably being prepared as far as athletically to be an athlete in case you. When the time came, no?
I don't think
Were you doing any kind of like gymnastics? Did you have you roll?
Restructure that question in
Okay. I was going to say, were you being groomed? What do we say? Did your dad and mom have you train different ways in terms of maybe not sport specific, but activity, other sports, or nothing? You're just a freak.
No, I was honestly.
Were you an active kid?
Like not really. I was actually very scrawny. Like I was just like all like super skinny, like no muscle. Wasn't that tall. You know, I just, you know, you would look at me and be like, all right, well he obviously doesn't play sports or pick up weights, you know. I was just kind of a kid, and I think that's you know, I don't know what their thought process was, whether or not they wanted to like put me into the lifestyle, because obviously they knew how it went too, right? So maybe it was a little bit of like, you know, hesitation on their part. You know, let me be a kid for a little bit, but you know, once I got into it is when, you know, my body started changing. I started putting on muscle. I started getting athletic, and a lot of it is just due to, you know, wrestling and kind of like my dad's training, you know. But I'd say between 5th grade and 8th grade, you know, I went through a radical change.
Now, what are the first things you remember that you were learning as far as technique, but also just physical development? Like, how was your dad preparing you? And was he your only coach at the time?
Yeah, I mean, he was my only coach until I graduated high school and came here. I have this vivid memory of trying to learn how to sprawl, and I couldn't do it. Like, I couldn't sprawl before the guy grabbed my legs. So I literally, I stood there and he made me do like, I don't even know, like 100 sprawls, 200 sprawls, whatever it was. I just remember fucking crying. So I hated wrestling when I first started because it's hard to convince like a 10-year-old, like, yo, all right, you're going to start doing things that are very difficult and you're going to stop having fun now. And it's like, well, I don't want to do that. Like, especially like, you know, I'm 10, 11. Like I said, all these kids have been wrestling since they were 4. I'm getting my ass beat every single day. Right. So I'm like, but why am I doing this?
And this at your dad's club?
At my dad's club, so like I have to go. And it's like, you know, it also, you know, you're thinking about like, you know, you're a kid. You don't want to go in there to your dad's gym and then have someone else come and beat your ass. It's like, you know, almost like, you know, is he a good coach? You know?
Right.
So it's like multi-layered there. So, I mean, but, you know, once I kind of, I don't know when it actually clicked. I just know that, you know, some moves started working. You know, the repetition, you know, and part of it has to do with as well, like, yeah, I started at 10, 11, whatever, however old I was at the time. But, you know, the difference between the physical, like the body awareness and body mechanic awareness of a 10-year-old is vastly superior to a 4-year-old.
Right.
Right. So the amount of things that I can learn in a year is the equivalent of what you're learning from 4 to 8.
Right.
Right. So it's like I made up for the lost time very quickly. You know, 5th to 6th grade, you know, pretty bad. I'm getting my ass beat every practice. You know, I'm crying. I don't want to go. I go to tournaments. I'm getting pinned in literally seconds, and like walking off the mat. And then, you know, like 6th to 7th grade, things start clicking. I'm starting to, you know, actually be a little competitive. You know, end of 7th grade, going into 8th grade now. A little more, you know, I'm you know, figuring things out. My body's kind of catching up. I, you know, hit puberty. I have a little bit of muscle. Like, I can move a little bit now. And then 8th grade is when I think I was like a viable wrestler. You know, I took Super 32, second in the state. You know,
That's after 3 years.
Yeah. So I mean, and I think I would share the same kind of, you know, it's hard to teach a kid how to wrestle. Well, it's hard to teach anyone anything when they don't want to learn.
Right.
So you gotta wait for that time where, you know, I bet this is kind of what happened. You know, I can't exactly recall, but I bet I was like, well, all right, I'm stuck going to practice. I might as well learn how to stop getting my ass beat every day. Like, you know, like at some point I probably came to the conclusion, I was like, okay, I have to wrestle. I get it. You know, I can't really do anything else, whatever. And then I was like, well, all right, might as well figure this out, you know.
So that's the physical side. But now talk about how was your dad? What was he saying to you? Was he saying like, hey, you got to keep it fun, or you have to work hard? Like, what are some of the early lessons, either before you started taking to the mat, you know, or once you started? What was he telling you? And your mom also, because she was high level also.
You know, it was a combination of kind of both, where it was like, yes, wrestling is work, right? Like, this is, you know, this isn't something you do to have fun. But at the same time, you have to try to make it fun. Yeah. Right? Because you can't hate doing it.
Right.
So it's like a very, you know, it's a bit of a balancing act. And you know, there's a lot of things that wrestling teaches you without anyone telling it to you. Right? Like, there's realizations you make about yourself. But, you know, as far as like my dad and his part in kind of my upbringing through wrestling, you know, he definitely taught me, you know, how to, you know, that nothing's given and you have to take things. Taught me, you know, what, you know, hard work is. You taught me about sacrifice, because that's a hard thing to wrap your head around when you're, in high school, when you're 16, where, instead of going to prom, I went to a wrestling tournament. Yeah. And it's like, well, okay, I'm not living the same life as everyone else anymore. I have, a different life now. And, I'm differentiating myself from them, and I'm choosing a lonelier path. Right. And that's some hard shit to swallow at 16, Yeah. So, but
looking back,
I'm obviously looking back, I'm super grateful that I stuck with it. My dad was obviously there for, I think when I was younger, we didn't have the best communication. It was a lot of one way. But I think when I graduated high school and especially towards the end of high school is when I started kind of being confident in my wrestling, and my wrestling at that point was different from my dad's. So it's like we got a conflict too now. So now he doesn't even like working with me.
Because he's all throws, right? He was all upper body from the videos I see of him.
Yes, but then he doesn't teach that at all.
No?
He never taught me how to throw. No, I tried when I was little, and I was just bad at it. And he was like, "Okay, don't do it. Stick to this." Yeah. He had a good game plan. He gave me, so as far touching back on what he taught me fundamentals. He didn't teach me crazy techniques or strategies, or he just taught me how to wrestle. In the very basics of it, I learned how to, he taught me a high crotch, he taught me the single leg, taught me the double leg, taught me how to sprawl, and that's, he taught me a duck under, and then, as far as top bottom wrestling was concerned, he taught me how to stand up, switch, basic kid moves, but we just practice was just, we came in, we warmed up, we did the same warm up every time. We would drill our high crotches, our single legs, our double legs, and then 2 or 3 other things depending on the day. And those kind of switch between fireman, duck under, or it was reshots, whatever. And we did those, and then we did 30 minutes alive, and that was practice. And then sometimes
you and him going live?
No.
Or you at the PTA?
No, I got everyone else in the club.
Yeah. So you spoke about hard work, sacrifice, and that nothing in the world is given. That'll relate to everything, whether it's wrestling, school, business, life. Talk about that. How does someone develop that? How is it developed in you? And if you were talking to a kid who looks up to you, obviously you have a ton of them now, what do you say to them to help expedite that process? Of course you have to go through it the hard way, but what would you say?
People always ask oh, how do I get better at wrestling? This is where I'm at now, how do I get to this? And the harsh reality of it is there's one answer and only one answer, and it's the hardest answer, which is just, if you really want to do it, you have to dedicate literally your entire life to it. Right. It's the harsh reality. I can't tell you to go run more or do more push-ups. No, you have to literally sacrifice, dedicate your being to nothing else but winning. Right. And that's not everyone's super willing to do that, and that's totally understandable. There's way more parts of life, but to me, my life is about wrestling. So, if yours is about hanging out with your friends and going to have fun and and traveling, doing whatever makes you happy, then that's your life. But my life is this, right? So it's hard for me to relate to you if you don't also follow the same path. And there's degrees to that, right? Because some people think they're on the path, but they're not. So going back to your question, right? Hard work is taught through kind of just doing the work, but it can't be just doing the work. It has to be doing the work with the intention of, doing it past what it's meant to do. I don't know how else to put it. You have to literally bring yourself to the point where your body is telling you to stop, and then you tell your body, no, we're going to keep going, and then push past those mental barriers, and that's where hard work begins, right? And repeat that and constantly be pushing back that limit of what you think you can do, because you can do so much more.
Is it for you personally, and I know everyone's a little bit different, are you telling yourself, I'm thinking about my goal to push through that wall, or are you thinking there's someone else out there who I'm going to be competing against who's doing this? What do you tell yourself to push yourself?
To be honest, I don't do any of that. I just go. I turn off my brain. I don't have to think. I'm going on autopilot, but as hard as I can. You know, I can't spare the energy to think. I'm literally trying so hard. Right. So
it's a combination. It's a combination of everything.
To be honest, the reason why I stuck with it, why I didn't quit, is, well, at first my dad wouldn't let me. You know, it's hard. You can't really hide from your dad. So, you know, I'm gonna see him at home. If I were to stay home and not go to practice, or he's the one driving me to practice, I could just be like, I'm not going. And I tried. I tried. I was like, I'm sick. I can't do it. I hurt my leg. No, you didn't. Let's go. So, you know, I guess, yeah, he kind of taught me that and not by my choice to not give up. Because eventually, you know, he showed me that if you stick with something and if you give it actual effort, you will get better at things, right? It's that simple act where it's, you know, given me quite an ego at some points where I feel like if I don't know anything about something, if you give me time, I can master anything.
Yeah. Right?
So
that's having like a growth mindset versus that fixed mindset where it's like, some people will just say, this is how I was born, I could never get better.
No, but literally to the point where I think I can do anything. Which is probably not true, but I think with enough time I could literally, you know, learn and you know, create that muscle memory and do everything else because of what I've done in wrestling. You know, it's like that cheesy quote that everyone always uses. You know, what is it?
You've wrestled, everything else in life is easy?
Yeah, that one.
Or easier?
Yeah. So, you know, yeah, that's really, I guess, why, you know, I kind of stuck with it is one, because my dad just wouldn't let me quit, and then two, like, you know, once I started reaping the benefits, once I started winning and tasting that, you know, what that was like, you know, that's quite the rush. So, you know, especially in wrestling, it's like winning probably feels so much better than some other things, because I literally 1v1 man versus man, I went out there and I beat you.
An illegal fight. And I had a chance.
An illegal fight. And also, you also dedicated your life to this. You did just as much, if not more, and I'm still the winner. So it's like...
The time is now to take your mindset to the next level with Wrestling Mindset. Make sure you go to our website, WrestlingMindset.com, and sign up for your free trial session today. Don't wait any longer. You want the mental edge right now. When you sign up for the free trial session, you're also going to get a copy of our free ebook, Building the Predator Mindset. This book has helped thousands of people build confidence, relax under pressure, get motivated, and build mental toughness in wrestling, school, and life. Make sure you sign up for your free trial session today.
Yeah, it's a crazy thing. It's like, you know, just the idea of combat, but it's so cool too.
And now the first time I knew you existed or learned about your existence, okay, I was up in Journeyman. I don't know, you must have been a junior, senior in high school, and you're wrestling Suriano. I'm from New Jersey. Mm-hmm. He was Mr. Everything. He didn't lose. He didn't get scored on. This guy from New York comes out and beats him. Okay, Vito, who is this guy? His dad's a world champ. Oh, well, that explains everything. Well, no, it doesn't, obviously, because you got to put that work in, right? That was the first time I remember watching you wrestle.
Especially within my younger days, like, I may not have had the same, you know, coverage as, you know, as like the Soriano, like the Spencer Lee, the Yanni, right? But, you know, I think, you know, and that really just contributes because, you know, I'm not going to get into it, but like, you know, what the media tells you is what you know.
Right.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So it's like, I may not be getting the coverage, but everyone else who I wrestle is aware.
Right.
You know, wrestling's not that big, you know. So we're a pretty tight knit, you know, group, right? So all these guys who keep winning know each other, right? Or the ones who place consistently, right? I'm not saying I won everything when I was in high school, but I placed pretty highly at almost every tournament I was at, you know. So Soriano at that point, I'm pretty sure knew who I was, right? And I knew who he was, and we knew it was going to be a good match, right? You know, and I think most people, you know, if I were to look back on that match, knowing what I know, I probably would have said Soriano wins, you know, 6-4, right? And I think you're 6-3 maybe, right? And you know, I think that's what the score was close to, and then I pull out kind of this little last second, I forget what it was. I think it was like a reversal to a tilt or something, some sort of like.
You put him on his back, right?
Put him on his back and got 2 swipes, and then won the match by 2. Right, so and you know that's how wrestling goes, especially in those younger matches, right? They're very volatile. You know, points are going up randomly, and you know sometimes it's just how it goes. So I think once you get higher up, the less random those points come, right? So literally over a decade after that match happened,
right? So
it's like, but no, it was. I think that's where I started kind of being on people's radars. Where, you know, it was tough because my whole sophomore year I had a very bad concussion. So I missed I missed Super 32, I missed, you know, a couple matches I think in the beginning of my season, like all that off season. So, you know, I obviously wrestled in all of my seasons and so I was 5-time finalist in New York, 5-time county champ, 4-time state champ, but you know, I think I was pretty well known throughout New York, but you know, getting that name out there is kind of synonymous with just like, you know, how good you're perceived, and that's kind of how it goes too, right? So it's like, you know, it may work the opposite way too, right? Like, oh, everyone's heard about this guy, but he's not actually that good, so you think he is, right? Because you know who he is. So
you see how the media portrays the person. Now talk about you had the concussion. A lot of guys, they don't bounce back. No matter, it could be a major injury, it could be a minor injury. When they're out, they miss time. They feel like, I'm not going to be able to get it back. What are you telling yourself if you remember back to then?
Oh, I don't remember much from back then. So it was at the Journeyman Classic. Yeah, Journeyman Classic my sophomore year during the summer. Before my sophomore year, so after my freshman year. And I remember walking into the tournament, warming up, and then I remember being at a gas station. So it's like that whole day is gone. And like from recalls of like, because Yanni was there at that point, like we're friends. He says like I double-legged the guy and went to go like spike him. But like I picked him up too high and his hips landed on my head and I spiked him on my head on the mat and knocked myself out. And apparently it was bad, like full, like, you know, like, and, you know, my dad's running out there trying to like get my tongue so I don't swallow it. Cause I'm like,
man,
apparently I was out for like, you know, over a minute. And then I'm like, and then
what was the first thing you remember?
Gas station. The gas station. Yeah. You know, I remember being at a gas station and be like, what's going on? And they're like, what month is it? And I'm like, I don't know, like
Thursday.
October, like November? Like, is that close? Like, and then my dad goes, where are we driving back from? I'm like, Super 32? Like, no, Journeyman. I was like, well, Journeyman was like 3 weeks ago, Dad. Like, like no. Yeah, so, and that was tough too. Like going to school after, it was like a pretty bad concussion, so I couldn't even like do class. I couldn't sit there and like stare at something for that long. But that was a tough bounce back. But once I started, starting to feel better, it's like I stayed off the mat for 2 months. That was like almost like I want to get back now. Like, let me start wrestling again. So, I think that kind of is how it always goes. It's hard, and sometimes we resent doing it. But if we were to take it away and say you couldn't wrestle, it's like, all right, no, I'll go back.
That's what I was going to say. And that's why sometimes getting hurt is one of the best things that could happen to a guy. Not like a terrible injury, but like, I'm out, and you start missing the things you're about.
Taking a break is good for sure.
Yeah.
I'd say not necessarily getting hurt per se, but yeah, that break that comes with getting hurt is sometimes what some people need. Yeah, so I took a loss last year before the season at the U23 Worlds, and there's sometimes where you lose and you learn a little bit, right? Well, you learn every time you lose, right? Especially when you win so much, right? We wrestle 5, 6, sometimes 11 matches in a tournament, right? So for the most part, for successful athletes, you're winning more than you're losing, and sometimes by a large amount, right? So when those losses do come, because they come for almost everybody, right? When they do come, they're almost always, it comes down to like, what's your response to that, right? So do you shut off? Do you turn off and kind of just go and hide, or do you like look at what happened and with a critical viewpoint and be like, okay, I need to get better than this, because however good I am right here wasn't good enough to beat this guy. So how am I supposed to beat everybody? Right. So how can I beat this guy? Take the first step to then beat the next guy, to beat the next guy, to just keep winning. So you got to look at what your mistakes were, and so the loss that we're referencing was usually when I took a loss, I would take a loss like in the semis and wrestle back for third, or in the finals and take second. But I had taken second at the Cadet Worlds. I'd taken second at the Junior Worlds. And I think this was kind of an ongoing theme where, I would get up there and, sometimes I would win, but a lot of the times, I was inconsistent. I would land in that 1, 2, 3 spot, and I wouldn't necessarily be sure where I'm landing, right? But so I went to the U23 Worlds, and this is after I had lost my Final X match with Gilman. So I'm the number 2 guy on the senior ladder, and I'm thinking, okay, well, I'll go to U23 Worlds. It'll be kind of easy. Go to school, right? Get there. My weight descent is good. Probably one of the best weight descents I've had, in the past couple of years, making 25 with the help of Frank here and Training Lab East Coast. I'm feeling good. Everything's good. Like, it's a good trip so far. First round match, I'm feeling confident. I'm feeling like I got energy. I can move, right? Like, the weight cut didn't hurt me that bad. I go out there and I put up 6 points, easy. This guy's not that good. And then he starts coming back on me, and I end up losing the match 10-6. So he just scored 10 unanswered points, and I lost. And I was like, sorry. Yeah. So I'm standing there, and I'm like, almost in disbelief. Like, how, right? Like, what is going on? How is this possible, right? Because I know it's not like. I know he's not that much better than me. I know he's not better than me at all. I'm the vastly superior wrestler, like vastly. So how is it possible that I just lost by that much? And I'm thinking, and I can't wrap my head around it. I'm so confused because I don't know the answer. It's not like, and yes, like I made individual mistakes during the match, but
that wasn't the main issue.
But like I know what the answers to those are. it's not like I didn't know how to do the move. I knew how to do it and I just did it wrong. Right? So it's like, I know the wrestling. I'm in shape. My weight descent was great. My attitude was there. What's that missing gap? Right? Like, what do I do? And I'm thinking about it and driving myself crazy, and then almost teching him, and then losing to him again. How am I so vastly inconsistent? So I sit down, I realize, okay, I am inconsistent, right? I need to be able to, if I can perform my best every time I go out there, instead of just rolling the dice, then I'm gonna, kill everybody that I wrestle. It's not even gonna be close, right? And so I'm thinking that's the thing, and so I just need to be able to replicate, not like even my best, but just good. Right? I just can't have bad performances anymore, right? So I, through multiple channels, and there was a lot going on at the time, but I got, through our alumni, I got in touch with a sports psych. 22 years old. This is my career. This is all I know how to do at this point. If I can't continue moving forward, then I don't have anything, right? This is my form of life or death. So I'm like, all right, I need to do everything I can. I need to explore every avenue, right? So, I'm lifting more now with Frank. I'm starting my new diet. I'm eating better. I'm lifting, and I'm doing my sports psych. And the part the sports psych played for me, I think, was just realizing that I wasn't in touch with myself. Right? I'm realizing, and retrospectively, it's easy. I have great inter-people problem-solving skills. I can help people. I can manage others very well. I'm a good talker. I'm a good, coordinator. I can see, but I'm terrible at managing myself. Right? I can't.
Terrible. Relatively worse.
League's different, right? So, I'm trying to figure out how to do this, and I realized I was so bad because he's like, can you describe to me how that feels? And I'm like, no, I can't. I don't know how it feels. And he's like, well, sit there. My personal thing of what I thought I needed was just like being able to, like the being able to replicate the performance. So I needed to be able to, kind of put myself in a position, kind of just all I needed to do, and it was the craziest thing, was just put myself in the same starting block every time. It's like if we started a race, and sometimes I start at the starting block, and sometimes I'm half a lap behind, and then I have to try to catch up to you.
Right.
And it's like just stepping on the same starting block every time makes racing a lot easier, So in that sense, once I've found kind of that rhythm and how to replicate, the feeling, the vibe that I wanted to start my matches, or when things, went off the rails or whatever it was, I was able to just hold, that's all it was though. Like I've had multiple people ask me like, what was the change? How did you get so much better? And I have to try to explain. I'm like, if you're asking like wrestling knowledge, skills, like I didn't really obtain any new ones. All I did was, now I'm starting the match at the same, I'm just competing at a higher level, yes, but all I'm doing is just starting in kind of the same spot every time. And that way I can produce relative same results, and that's why now it looks like I'm, getting a lot better, because now I'm competing at, just a generally higher level.
Yeah, we're always saying, like, you can't talk, everyone wants a consistent performance, but you can't talk about a consistent performance without first looking at consistent thoughts, consistent words, consistent behaviors. I assume that's kind of similar to what you're saying here, like, before your starting block, consistent thoughts, consistent words, consistent behaviors leading to a consistent performance. Is it something like that?
Yeah, so what? Yeah, so I try to just, like you said, I have the same consistent thoughts. So I have this kind of systematic way of going about and it expanded what I thought about it as well. Working with someone was it's not just about the fact of you going out there and wrestling. The preparation starts literally months in advance.
Right.
If you want that optimal result, then it you can't do it all right then. It takes just as I can't not practice for a month and then roll up to a tournament and be like, okay, time to wrestle. So it takes that training, so that constant exposure to it, and constantly getting better at doing it. And putting yourself at the same spot, right? And imagining you're at a tournament and performing how you want to.
Right.
I do a lot of, meditation sounds, but yeah, like meditation, and a lot of vision work. I just think about wrestling more. And that's the other thing, it gave me another outlet to think about wrestling. Right.
Right. From a different angle, from a different kind of perspective a little bit.
Yeah, and just, going back to the thing I said where well, what's the one thing you can do to get better wrestling and dedicate your life? The more time you spend doing things that are wrestling related, the more you're going to see results.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, when was the first time you ever heard of sports psychology, mindset training? What was your first impressions? Because most kids, they're just like, I don't need this, or I'm good, right?
And especially wrestlers, we're just so hard-headed that we wanted to think that we can just kind of brute force everything, right? And a lot of the time it's like, well, you're trying to shove a square brick through a circle hole here. You might want the circle block. So it's like,
But we'll ask for help with technique. We'll ask for help with strength. We'll ask for help with weight cutting, nutrition. But why the mind? Why not the mind?
Because there's so much I think wrestling for a lot of the time is almost separate. You wrestle, but admitting you have a problem with how you as a person are and how you operate is way harder. So maybe I can't wrestle too good, but now I have to be I can't think good, It's but that's not, obviously we know that's not how it is, but it's that's how I think some people think about it.
But that's important, you calling BS on that in front of the camera there, where it's because real, that is the mentality that people will have. Whereas our technique, it's on display. People could see it. You have a problem here. You can't defend your left leg or whatever it is, right? Or you look at the body, it's this muscle is relatively weak. That's on display. But mentally, it's we could kind of hide that a little bit. It's clearly you have to be tough to a certain degree, otherwise you wouldn't be wrestling at all.
But at the same time, at the higher levels, your mind is definitely also on display. I can see if you're mentally weak for sure.
That's the point. That people still can see, even they think that's the whole point.
Maybe not from the camera or from the stands, but from me standing across from you on the mat, I can tell, because I'm here to win, and if you don't meet me with the same energy, I know I've already won. It doesn't matter how good you are. If you don't have the desire to fight me, to lay it out, to lay it out right here. If you're afraid of that, then I've already won. It doesn't matter how good you are. You could be way better than me. But if I want to win, and I will literally cut off my arm to do it, and you're like, well, I got something to do after this. I got planned. I'm
got
winning.
the edge.
I've won. So it's
But it's not just your opponent who could tell. Your coach could probably tell if your head's in it or not.
Oh,
and a skilled parent, or even not a skilled parent, a parent who just knows their kid. The parent doesn't have to be a world champ. They know their kid. It's he's not ready. He's beat before he even steps out there.
It's the difference between, and it's silly, but it's the kid who's, maybe he's up by a lot. He's scoring on command and then gets taken down, and then you see his offense drop off. Right. Or, a positive of some kid gets thrown to his back in the first couple seconds, fights off, and then claws his way back and wins.
Right.
Right. So these are examples of the physical form that it takes.
Right. But it's there, so it is on display. It is there, so
Sure.
it's whether or not you're going to choose to address it head on.
Yeah.
Now, going back to the sports psychology, you say you're obviously working with one now. If you could go back to yourself at a younger age, what age would you have started? Would have you started earlier? Do you think it could have helped if you started earlier?
You know, it could have been NCAA champ my freshman year. It could have been, you know, on the Olympic team in 2020. You know, looking back, I had so much potential and just, and not like I wasted it, but like, you know, sometimes it didn't happen, right? So I think at the same time though, like everyone is on, you know, like their own journey.
Sure.
This is a part of my story.
Yeah.
So I think at the same times those losses built up to a point where I had to explore other avenues, and that's what led me to, you know, working on myself.
Right.
So without those, you know, I don't know if I would have had the same urgency to, you know, look inside, look myself in a mirror, right?
But if a kid was serious, should they be starting early?
Yeah, for sure. I'd say it helped me learn how to. It helped me like acquire a lot of tools that I use just straight up outside of wrestling too. You know, just like general well-being skills. You know, like how to, you know, be self-aware and you know, take count of my surroundings and stuff. Like just some general good stuff. So I think, you know, I think just the emphasis on that stuff is definitely good for, you know, middle school, like, you know, maybe younger, but like I'd say, yeah, like middle school is a good time to like, you know, acquire those skills, maybe early middle school, and, you know, be able to use those. And because also the other thing is like kids don't realize how impactful those first couple of years are,
Right.
and how quickly they go by.
And there's a big drop off. People may quit.
Yeah.
They might have the tools, but they can't stand it.
Especially like, you know, for me personally, it was like education, you know, like classes. Like, you know, I didn't do too well my freshman year, and it was hard for me to wrap my brain around the fact that like, oh, this is going to determine, like me going to this class right now is going to determine what grade I get, which determines which college I go to, which determines what job I get, which determines like, so like, yo, your whole life is started already. Like you're going, like all of this is important.
Right.
You know, I think a lot of times you, as a kid, and it happened with me especially, you think like, oh, like it doesn't count. Like I'm
Right.
still a kid, it's fine.
I got time.
Yeah. No, time, you know. Yeah. Wish, you know, if you had a time machine, we wouldn't be talking right now, you know. But
And it's like, yes, losses are always going to be part of the process. I think that's inevitable. I don't care how much you train your technique, your mind, your nutrition. Losses are going to happen throughout a wrestling career. But it's like if we could save some of that, right? If we could save some of that hurt, we want it through the strength training, through the technique, through the conditioning, through the nutrition, through the mindset. We want to save that. Like, why make it as hard on yourself as you possibly can? Like, why not? Do that ahead of time.
Sure.
And now we know that. And obviously me saying that is one thing. People hearing it from you is quite another thing. Where it's like, hey, you're right, the kids have to take it serious. If they're not bought in and mature enough, they're not going to get anything out of it. We could stand on our head with mindset, right? They have to be ready to receive the information.
For sure. And, you know, I think that timing is different for everyone.
Of course.
So, but
Them hearing it from you, they might start 2 years earlier.
Yeah.
Because you're like, hey, it helped me. I went through it, so you don't have to go through it.
yeah, I think it was, you know, a vital aspect of you know, I do think it's very important. I think it should be treated just as, you know, strength training, or, you know, if you got that good mentality and, you know, you got the good technique, you know, there's that, and that's the other great thing about wrestling is it's just there's no winning formula.
Right.
You know, you don't have to be big and tall or run super fast. You know, nothing is required. So it's just about how can you use what you have to compete against other people, right? And that's the fun of it.
Absolutely. Talk about Coach Gray a little bit. We see him pointing to his head a lot and how he speaks to the team, motivates everyone. how does he incorporate the mindset? And not just Coach Gray, but Frank, the whole university. How do you guys incorporate the mindset just into practice and perspective, peak performance, motivation? How do they incorporate it here?
I mean, we definitely put a large emphasis on, setting that tone during practices. We will have, some days where we are, as a collective, going to a very dark place that day. We're gonna get pushed, we're gonna get tired, we're gonna surpass what we thought we could do. And it's gonna be hard. And we're all not gonna be able to walk after, but we're all gonna do it. And that's the other thing about just the culture that we've built here is like, we're all on the same page, You don't have a single person complaining like, oh, I don't want to do this. We all get in line and we go. So, and in our minds, we're like, I really don't want to do this, but
Right.
we all do it.
Yeah.
Because we're all here for the same reason. We're all bought in.
Right.
And that kind of, just speaks to, the past years that we've had, right? The alumni of the program, the previous coaches, just everyone putting in their 2 cents to, build what we have now. But yeah, at the same time, we have days where we come in and we play, right? We have, and not play, but it's less structured, more open to what you want to do, right? So every day is purposeful. Every day has like there's a reason why we're coming here. We're not just coming here to stand here, right? So we're constantly getting better, and everyone is on the same page and is there to do the same. As far as like how mindset is. Oh, also, every Wednesday we as a team we meet with the sports psychologist that works at Cornell. So as a team we're all also, have exposure to that as well. I like to keep it short and sweet.
Yes.
I like to attach, meaning to one word, and I do that obviously before the match comes. It's something. It's part of the training, right? So, like for me, my response to these are some of the words that I would use in these scenarios. So like, breathe, reset is a common one. Forward, it just has to do with the fact that I'm always on the offense, right? So, for example, if I make a mistake, my response would be forward. So
Yeah.
I made a mistake, but I'm still gonna go forward. If I were to, be like, oh, I made a mistake and then retreat, then I wouldn't be playing into my strong suit, right? So I keep on the gas, even if I mess up, I keep on the gas and I just keep going. And this is how I do what I do best. But yeah, being prepared for it is definitely something that you need to practice for and prepare for.